Welcome back to another episode of the Near Post podcast. Didn't think we'd be chatting with this, but City have just been made champions. Unfortunately, it was just the inevitable, really. First of all, let me introduce my guest. Got a big West Ham fan here, Corey from the West Ham Way. How you doing, lad?
Yeah, good, mate. Yeah, all good. Other than Sunday and Everton doing a bit of a job on us, it's frustrating, but you've got to have a bit of context, I guess, with some of these things. I'm sure you as a Liverpool fan will be very, very similar, particularly your injuries. But yeah, no, mate. Other than that, really can't complain.
Yeah, not too bad. Look, we're obviously cheering on Man United there. I watched a bit of it. Man United made 10 changes, so me and Peter, anyways. By the way, Peter couldn't make it tonight, had a bit of training or whatever, but first time hosting for me. But we were kind of, me and Peter, to be honest with you, me and Peter gave up on top four a month or two ago, and then you get the odd result that goes our way, sort of thing. So it kind of just reels you back in. But then a result like this happens.
Yeah. I never really wrote. I didn't write you off, to be honest, because of obviously we picked up some key injuries as well, and the way that the league's gone this season, there's been so many chopping and changing. You see Leicester losing games, and I think you've been poor this season, particularly for the past couple of months. Spurs as well, but a couple of wins like we've seen, and you're well up there. But I think United have done us all a little bit of a disservice. I get why they've done it. Obviously, the amount of games that they've got, but for me, I think once we lost that Chelsea game, I think it was out of our grasp because they're not gonna drop any points.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But just United kind of got my hopes up there. But yeah, that's it basically done for me. I think Leicester it's in Leicester's hands. If we don't win on Thursday, sort of thing, it's over. But it was over for me anyways. But obviously, big West Ham fan, and to be fair, you can't really complain this season. As I was saying to you off air there, I thought you were being a bit of a relegation scrap sort of thing, but you have really overachieved, I would say. And Moyes is doing it with a limited squad. Like, there's some good players there, but he's squeezing every last bit out of that squad. So you just got to put a bit of respect on his name.
Yeah, so I've been calling for him to be manager of the season. I think on the outset, a lot of people will say that the clear guy will be someone either like Thomas Tuchel if he goes and wins the Champions League, or Pep Guardiola, clearly. But you've got to look at the resources that he's had at West Ham. The start of the transfer window in the summer, obviously we lost Dean Garner at the time, who was going to be a prominent feature, I think, in that first team on that left-hand side. And we lost a lot of players in terms of squad depth as well behind the scenes. So we really were stripped back. But I think he's just been able to galvanise the squad. Like you said, we do have a good core of players in there. Obviously, Declan Rice and Souček in that injury room in the midfield. What they can do has been unbelievable. But also getting a lot out of the likes of Pablo Fornals, who, even though we lost on Sunday, played brilliantly. Aaron Creswell as well in terms of set pieces. He's I think the thing with Moyes, and a lot of the reason why West Ham fans probably didn't want him back the second time, was because of the history that he's had at Man United and Sociedad and Sunderland. But if you give him enough time, he will implement the right type of squad ethic. And I think as well, he's shown that he's improving as a manager, or at least in terms of understanding the club a little bit. He's not afraid to make substitutions. That was a big thing. Even when West Ham were doing well, he wasn't making enough subs and wasn't being proactive enough. But to be fair, I honestly can't complain. I really can't complain. And I think he's out of contract at the end of the season. So again, for me, I'd give him a 3-year deal, give him time, give him the money that we could get from the Europa League, and try and stabilise his club, because it's tough with our owners. But if anyone's going to do it at the minute, it's Moyes.
Yeah, facts. Yeah, shout out to Liz there. I can agree with that. I think Corey can as well, maybe. I don't know. But me as a Liverpool fan, I definitely can. But do you know what, your owners, yous have always, because I remember yous got spanked by Burnley and the fans stormed the ground. Remember that? That was absolutely mad. Like, can have your own. I know that they have backed them decently this season. You've made some like Soufal, Thomas Souček. Like, they've just been absolute gems. How much were they? I think they were like 25-30 million between them, if I'm not wrong.
It's not even that. So Soufal should be 5.4 overall, but the first installment's 1.8. So that's all we paid so far. And obviously Souček was 13 mil. I think it might have been going up to 17 mil. But I can't give credit to the board because unless you are a West Ham fan, you don't know how some of these signings come around. The one I liked was Jarrod Bowen. I thought that was a really astute signing. And I know that West Ham, even under Pellegrini, had been looking at him. So that possibly is one that you could maybe give a bit of credit. But Souček, in terms of, I think he was just a bit of an outlier. You'd seen him in the Czech League for Slavia Prague. And then when we got Soufal in, it was on the recommendation of Souček. And I don't think anyone could have predicted how well he was going to adapt to the league. And he's been absolute mustard. And West Ham fans say, can you remember the last time a right back's come to the league and been so comfortable with it? And literally from a minute go, he just slotted right in. And it's great because right back was a serious problem for us. Fredericks wasn't good enough. I still don't think technically he's great, and defensively there's problems there. But just sort of plugging that gap, getting another midfielder with Declan Rice was huge, because I think Declan can play as a single pivot, but as a double pivot, it gives him license either to get forward or sit and let Souček get forward as well. So, yeah, and that's been clever. It's been clever business. We've got the most. You're right. We've got the most out of those players that we could have expected. But we've had a season with only one or two strikers. Obviously, Allaire goes in January, and it's frustrating. Not enough centre midfield depth. So there are major things that need to be resolved. But again, like, I'm sure you're sitting there going, "What are you complaining about? You're doing well." But it's just long term. You just want your club to do the best it can do.
Realistic. Yeah, I think next year for yous could be a struggle for a top 10. I think you were kind of saying to that, if yous really don't add to that squad, what do you think you'll do with J Lingz? Like, I can't believe how well he's done. I thought he'd be a good signing for yous. Anyways, do you think you'll get him on permanent, because he looks so comfortable in London, sort of thing?
Yeah, I think all the sort of chips are in our favour with him coming to West Ham. I think he's acclimatised well. The squad spirit is something that West Ham that's probably not getting picked up a lot on. But you see, I don't know if you've seen that video of Mark Noble getting pranked the other day in the training room, but that's something in my lifetime. I haven't really seen a West Ham squad that together. And I think that's a big pull for Lingard. But more importantly, he's playing time. And at West Ham, he's getting a lot of playing time. There's a lot of responsibility on him. The manager believes in him. That would, for me, be the move for Lingard to make. And obviously, I'd love him to have him at West Ham. The problem's the money. I think we've got enough money. I don't buy this argument that West Ham don't have 25 mil and 100k a week. We've brought Andrei Yarmolenko on the other day, who's on about 130. So I think if you ship him out, then that should solve a problem. But I would love to have him. And he surprised me in terms of every element of his play. Shots from distance, he can come deep, he can get between the lines, he can drag the ball, he's a progressive runner. Like, I didn't know how good at football he was. And I think that's a lot of what people have said about Lingard. And you see that from his goal contributions. He's ridiculously effective. But that's a must. I'd like to get that done before the Euros, if I'm honest. At the end of the season, get it done, get it sorted, and we can look forward after that.
Facts, because if he has a good Euros, even if he doesn't play low, like, he's going to Euros, he's a kind of a Southgate favourite, and he's done it for. I think he's definitely going to go to the Euros, yeah, just because last World Cup he was probably one of your better players, and Southgate has his favourites. He seems to be the favourite. I thought he was decent at that World Cup. Thing is, if he goes, let's just say if he scores a big goals at the Euros, sort of thing, that'll bring his thing up by like 5 million. You know how it works. If you do enter in a major tournament like that, just skyrockets the price. Man United will last. But I think he only has a year or two left on his contract. And surely he's looking at it now. I'd rather go West Ham, where I'm going to be one of the main men, play football. Because let's be honest, United he's not going to play. He's just not going to play.
The thing is with Lingard is, I know people dig him out a little bit because he acts like sort of an overgrown child, but he's only 28 and he's still got, really, for me, 3 years left of his prime. He hasn't played for 18 months. There's still a lot more mileage on the clock there. I think that's an astute bit of business. And I just think that, again, I've watched him for Manchester United and never really thought he was the player that he was sort of proclaimed to be. But like you said, in the World Cup, some of the finishes, I know it was against Panama, and he was kind of running the show a little bit in that 10 role. And I hope he gets to the Euros. I do. But you just look at some of the talent in that 10 role. Mason Mount, Foden, Grealish, that hasn't really had a look in, probably because he's been injured for 2 months. It's a tough ask. But obviously, as a West Ham fan, nothing would give me more pleasure than seeing Lingard and Rice at the Euros, because I reckon they'd boss it, particularly Declan.
Yeah, Rice is nailed on to go. Obviously, as an Irish person,
I know, Rice. I said it and I was like,
people say it with Grealish, but the thing with Grealish didn't get capped. Like, Rice actually played a senior match with us. Like, he got capped. I know it was only a friendly against the USA, I think it was, but at least Grealish left a bit. But yeah, it is sickening, because I didn't think Rice and Grealish would go on and be as good. Like, just going on Grealish, like, I know he's not, he done us dirty, but he's still one of my favourite players to watch. I think he's absolutely sick. I take him at Liverpool and Harp. On Rice, I think he gets slightly overhyped. I think he's a good player, very solid CD. I'm not even just saying that. Bias aside, I think he's slightly overhyped just because England are kind of lacking a few CDM sort of thing. But nah, he's a good
Mate,
player, to be fair.
he is mustard. I'm telling you now, he's one of them players where you have to watch him week in, week out to understand him. And I do know that he's that type of player. And I think this season he's got a lot of plaudits, maybe because of West Ham's form. If we were probably bottom half, he's not getting the same level. But I think he's got a lot to contribute towards that. I just think he's actually improving in terms of his game. We've seen it for England a couple of times, him driving forward, his passing range has improved. And if Declan Rice could get 5 goals a season, if just a little bit extra, I think he'd be coveted. But for me,
that's not his game anyways, though. So he shouldn't be expected to get the goals.
It isn't, but I think a lot of the same sort of criticism comes to Calvin Phillips, because Calvin's not the type of player that's going to necessarily go and get a goal or an assist, but he's very accomplished as a defensive midfielder. I actually think England have got 2 really decent defensive midfielders in both of them, and I don't think there's any problem in them both playing, because I do think you can free up Declan Rice to get a bit further forward like he has done, but I don't trust Southgate, man. We got all the talent in the world, and I'm still going into Euros thinking, but no one's going to be completely happy with that first team he's going to put out. He's going to do something. So I'm kind of prepping myself already.
Liz asking, I'm guessing that's Declan Rice. Mine's definitely Lingard. I've got a friend, I've got a mate as well. He has a bit of J Lingz gear. He's got the hoodie, he's got the cap. So I know a few J Lingz fanboys. I'm a big fan of him as well. But yeah, we done our Euro squad, and me and Peter couldn't agree on it, sort of thing. But I had Rice starting with Henderson, but I don't know if Henderson is back fit. I wouldn't put Rice with. To be honest, I think Phillips is a bit overrated, because he's a bit of a hipster sort of baller. Got the funky hairstyles. He's a good player. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But I think Rice is a level above him. I think Rice is a lot better. I know Phillips done a job on Bruno. I don't know if you've seen that last week. Just man marked out of the game. So
masterful what he did against me. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, it's what Phillips does is very specialised, and I think Bielsa's built that side around him. And it's not to take away from Calvin, because I think his counter pressing, his passing range, he's got a lot to him. But I just think Declan, it's hard to describe, but he's just a level above in terms of what he can do on the ball. You never see Calvin Phillips carry the ball. Declan can do that. He can drive, he can sit deeper, he can spray the ball as well. Maybe not as good as Calvin, but I feel that anyone that watches both of them regularly will know that Declan is just that level above. But Calvin gets a little bit of criticism anyway, because I think people just think he plays for Leeds, he's not good enough. And I do kind of sympathise with that when you're looking at it, but I just think when you see him play week in, week out, like I've seen a couple of Leeds games this season, he definitely deserves his place.
Yeah, facts. I hate to say it about Rice, but man's balling it. So you've given up on that top 4 completely. I think you're in a better position than us. I suppose if you snuck in,
who would have thought it, man? Who would have thought the champions of England? We would have been in a better position than you lot. Yeah, I know. Is what it is, isn't it? It's just crazy old season.
It's a joke. I could say injuries and stuff. The injuries are excuse not to win the league or compete for a league, but man, they're not. There's no excuse not to make top 4. I still think we should have made it comfortably, sort of thing. Yeah, Chelsea sacked their manager straight early on. Got top 4. They could win a double, which is absolutely disgusting as well. I said as soon as Tuchel came in, they'd make top 4. Lampard. We made this page off Lampard's slander. He made that team look miles worse than they were. I was looking at the squad they have. He got people doubting Kante, sort of thing. I was like, this. The
way he was using him. I just don't think I think he could be a good manager, Lampard, but I think he hasn't really earned his stripes yet in the way that Gerrard has tried to do that at Rangers, and the way that he's done it in the youth team. Lampard's been thrown in at Derby, then thrown in at Chelsea. I suppose to a degree, I was thinking about this earlier, you've got to give him some credit for getting top 4. But in terms of people hyping him up for Chelsea to then go and compete for a title, I think it's very premature. They had a lot of players in there. Again, it's going to take a lot of time for them to adapt. And I don't think he's tactically astute enough yet for him to get the best out of those players. And to be fair, the levels that you're seeing compared to Lampard's side and Tuchel's side with exactly the same squad. And it also goes under the radar, the fact he's using Christensen, he's using Rudiger, arguably some of their best players, particularly since Tuchel's come in. It shows you how good a manager he is. And I was worried when we played him, because I thought, I tell you what, without Declan in this side, we can't compete with that midfield. And true to form, it did happen, because it's impossible. Even City struggle. So we haven't really got much hope. But yeah, they got it bang on, mate. They got it bang on. It's probably what Arsenal should have done. If they were going to try and change things up, they should have definitely got rid of Arteta and brought someone who knew what they were doing in.
But I think if Arsenal were a serious club, they never even would have brought in Arteta. Like, he never would have been considered, sort of thing. It's his first big job. Like, I think that Arsenal job is just a poison chalice. I think any top manager can go there and kind of ruin their reputation. I thought Emery, like, I thought Emery got disrespected, sort of thing. You see what he's done. Like, he's won titles with PSG. He's won the Europa League. What, he could win it like 5 times if he beats Man United. So that Arsenal job, I think it's nearly impossible. The players are cowards. The board, to be fair, under that board, there's only so much you can do. Like, they're probably Arteta's yeah, go on, yeah.
No, I was just saying, I think you're right. It's kind of systemic, the problem at Arsenal, and it's easy just to say, I don't think Arteta is the right man anyway, so I think that is part of it, but Wenger leaves such a massive void, and that club and the way that it's been run, and there's probably an argument that there has been a lack of ambition. I know they spent money on Ozil, and I know they brought Sanchez in, but in terms of them being able to compete, they just haven't spent the money for a long time. I know they've spent money recently, but then even when they have, the recruitment's been poor. I think 72 million for Pepe is a bit of a disgrace. Like, I know I think he could still come good, and I think there are certain signs from him that he could still be a decent player. But for me, you look at their back four. That's not Champions. That's not a Champions League back four. That's not even really a.
It's really Championship standard, man. I'm not even. I honestly think Rob Holding, Bellerin are Championship standard. And when you throw in Xhaka at left back, I know Tierney's a good player, but it's closer to Championship standard than Champions League standard. I'm not even ripping the piss there.
I had a little bit of needle with Lee Gunner the other week because I said I reckon West Ham's first team's better than Arsenal's, and I think the reason why I said that was because there's very few Arsenal players that I would put into this West Ham side. I think Saka, Tierney probably picks himself, Aubameyang when he's in form. But other than that, I'm struggling to say that person definitely has to get over it. And I think fair play to those Arsenal fans for doing that protest because I think it does take a lot. And I think I'm glad to see football fans in general now are starting to stand up a little bit towards bad ownerships. And I know better than more. You know that an ownership can ruin a club.
But you stormed the pitch during the game or after a game. I remember them scenes. They were trying to get to. I think it's Sullivan is your man's name. They were trying to get to his press box sort of thing.
Yeah, it was bad, man. It was because the backstory to that was there was supposed to be a protest outside the ground before, and whoever was running it at the time, obviously it's changed now. You've got an official sort of protest group, Hammers United, that are trying to work with the club, which isn't going well. Yeah. But that kind of disbanded and it all sort of spilled into the ground. And that's what I say to, when people complain about their club, it's like West Ham actually got on that pitch. The geezer that got, I think he's banned. I don't think he can go to the stadium now. Said, right, that's enough. Took a corner flag out and stuck it in the middle. Because he did that, they know the pressure's on them. And obviously there's been a lot of sort of outcomes to that. But yeah, exactly. And also the fact that the club then went and spent 100 mil the following summer because they would not have spent that money. Now, yes, they've taken it out. They've sold a load of players. They've probably reaped that back in double. But it's fan pressure is such a massive thing. So I am happy to see some of these boards, despite it being Tottenham and Chelsea, that are trying to look at fan representation because I think that's the way football needs to go.
Yeah, you say that. I get what you mean, but I think they're all just doing that for show. They'll do something. They'll say they're for the fans. Like you seen our owner had an apology. Man, like I don't know how you can take that seriously. We'll probably get a marquee signing like someone like a Sancho or I would say Mbappe, but that's just impossible. That's never going to happen. But even if someone like a Sancho or even a Rafinha and the fans will kind of get gassed over it. Same with United. So what the Man United fans did was like they got the biggest game in English football called off. We let's be honest, I'm surprised by our fans. I thought Anfield would have been. I know there were signs up and stuff around Anfield, but to be honest, they did feck all. Arsenal fans did have that big protest, but then you seen after they had a so-called protest and they clapped the players in to the Europa League game. I'm like how can you clap for like Bellerin and Xhaka? I'm right. So my mom's side of the family are all Arsenal fans. I wouldn't say they're my second team, but they're like I have a soft spot for them sort of thing. But their fans don't help themselves. Jesus Christ, they're jokes.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with a lot of fan bases, particularly in this type of situation. If you're not united and you're not consistent, West Ham are consistent. There were protests going on before, obviously COVID-19 come around. Again, they will go on when we're back. It's just about that kind of level of consistency. And I'm not sure, I understand the outrage. And that's why you've got to kind of take your hat off to Arsenal and Manchester United and even Chelsea to a degree for going out there. But if you really feel that strongly about it, you've got to keep going. I think United maybe are the only club that I'm looking at now that are going to keep going and keep banging the drum. If they don't, then you're gonna end up 2 years down the line. The same thing will happen with a type of Super League or a hybrid of it, and these things will keep going on because we've seen now that a lot of these owners have shown their hand. We obviously knew they were all in it in the money, and Sky aren't blameless, and all these TV companies aren't blameless. But
Sky are shambles. The Sky that. I remember Neville's outrage. It was. Oh, I don't want to say it's fake, but I remember they got it during the Burnley game. I guarantee someone was just in his ear and they're like, "Gary, make a bit of a show of that there because they're charging us. I don't know if you've Sky member, but like they're charging us whatever. BT are charging us, ripping us like." And then the cheek of Ferdinand. I remember when he was on about he has something with Mike Ashley. I'm not sure what it is with the Sports Direct thing. And
he's got his own clothing brand, doesn't he?
When he's on, there you go. And then he was on about like why don't they pool together and buy the club themselves to Newcastle fans? Like I just thought that was the cheek of him. And then he was giving out about the Glazers. Like they don't know what to say. They're all kind of covering their own back. So it's hard to trust any of them sort of thing. Like they're saying Neville saved football. Carragher's like. I think Carragher and Neville, they're just hypocrites, to be honest, man.
Well, I think the only reason they did that is because Sky allowed them to do it. If Sky, and you saw that the other day when they were condemning the fact that there was a protest, for United Liverpool, and they'll do that when it suits them, and they get their, they dub it the biggest game, and it's inevitably always a 0-0 or a 1-0, and it's an awful game to watch.
Facts.
But and in the other hand, when it's sort of taking money out of their pocket, and obviously they're going to create and they're going to be broadcasters' rights elsewhere, we're not having that. We can't have that. So at the same time, it does show you the power if everyone unites, but at the same time, there's too many. The Premier League's been inviting this for years, man. The way that it allows certain owners in and it's let it go under. And I even think to a degree the way that he's going to deal with some of these big six clubs, and I know Liverpool included that, but I think they're going to give him an easy odd fine and just basically a bit of a threat. But that's not enough for me. I look at it and think, there should be points deductions and possibly banning of comment. If you're going to be serious, if you're going to create a deterrent. But it does frustrate me. But I knew the Premier League would back down because they can't afford to. That's the amount of power that all these big six clubs have. Liverpool, United, they bring in those figures. If you take them out of competitions, the whole thing collapses. So as a West Ham fan, I'm not used to it. So I don't know about all the, the European football.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Yeah, it's interesting where I get not a top six fan's opinion on it. Like, if I was a West Ham fan, if I was a Leicester fan, I'd be like, fuck the top six sort of thing. Like, you know what I mean? We deserve that. Should have been thrown at us. And Tommy's making a good point there. €15, £15 they were charging, like, and they were hyping them up to the hill. Super Sunday, West Brom, Burnley, Fulham. Like they were, that was their Super Sunday, like, and it was £15. It wasn't even £15 for a weekend's package of football is still a rip off, but £15 for that game, for any game, was just a joke, to be honest. And they only stopped that because of boycotts and things and the outrage. So, man, it's hard to take them lads seriously. They're just absolute hypocrites, especially Sky.
Yeah, I agree. I think as well with what they do in terms of away games, changing times to suit certain Super Sunday fixture lists and things like that. It's frustrating, but I can't see it changing. I think even you see with the Champions League format, I think it's still leaning towards giving historical sides. Your AC Milan, for example, if they don't get into the Champions League in their own league, they'll still get that opportunity. And unfortunately, that's the way it's gone. I think there's a lot to do with some of the people in football need vetting. But I mean, listen, as long as that Super League didn't happen and it hasn't happened, that's the main thing. I still think it's very interesting. Barcelona, Madrid and Juve aren't backing down from it. They're in so much trouble financially, they can't afford to.
Yeah, I seen Juve were gonna. Peter's big into Serie A. AC Milan is like his second team. His dad was a big AC Milan fan, but Juve haven't left yet. And if they don't leave before the season ends, sort of thing, they're going to get kicked out of the Serie A. It's looking like they won't even make top four. But yeah, Barca loaded that, and you see, I think it was Perez that was literally leading this Super League sort of thing. So that's why they're not going to leave. I think Juve they're going to have to sell Ronaldo. I think they're in a bit of financial trouble as well. But we all know when Juve are dodgy at best. Like, they were relegated a few divisions for match fixing. So, like, you can't really take them too seriously. I know they're a massive club sort of thing, but if if they do you? I actually don't think they will be kicked out of the Serie A. I know that that's going to be said and stuff, but realistically, I'd say it's the same with the Serie A. Juve bring in so much viewers, sort of thing, that they'll find a way. Like, because this Super League isn't dead in the water. Best believe you got the Glazers, you got FSG. They're on Zoom calls as we speak, thinking of another plan they're going to do months ahead, years ahead, sort of thing. Because that was probably years in the making, and they just threw it. I loved how they threw it. I think it was the day the stock market was closed, and they just kind of announced it just as everyone was going to go to bed, just to minimize the outrage, sort of thing. So, like these owners know what they're at. They're billionaires for a reason, basically.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's the bit that shocked everyone. The fact that everyone kind of got a bit blindsided by the whole thing. Like, they would have been preparing, or they would have gone into a club like Manchester United or Liverpool with that intention years ago. And I think there's a level of ignorance to a degree that people think, well, you can't do that and they couldn't do it, which is fair enough. And that's because of the fan outrage. But you can't essentially just tear up the pyramid of English football, Italian football, Spanish football just to suit you. And I think the only reason it didn't happen was because I just think fans would have just disowned the idea. But having said that, who knows? In 10, 20 years' time, when there's a new generation of fans that do want to go and see the best players from the best clubs, does that demand sway things? And that takes away from the domestic fan. And that is the concern. And even, I know it wasn't going to happen, but at one time it looked like West Ham, if they expelled them from the league, would be second. But it's a very hollow victory. Like, I don't want to get Champions League football if we haven't done it properly.
Yeah, it wouldn't feel the same. It wouldn't feel the same.
It takes everything out of it, doesn't it? Because it's the level of competition. The fact we have done so well this season, all of a sudden, if you take some of those teams out, it's like, well, we've done all right, and the Premier League would collapse as well because you wouldn't have those teams in it. So.
Facts.
It's worrying, mate. It is worrying. But I think it's good, though, that fans now, they've kind of shown their hand. And when it does happen again, I expect there to be that same level of animosity, which I think you need to in order to get rid of it.
Yeah, like, Saibal brings a good point up there. The bigger clubs probably should get a bit more of the money, maybe, because they're bringing in more revenue. But it doesn't mean they can break away. And let's be honest, like, let's say with your owners, let's just say Perez came to, I think it's Sullivan, and was like, you're going to get this amount of money for joining us in the Super League. Like, let's be honest, he would have accepted, or I'd be shocked if he didn't. Like, all these other clubs, you know what I mean? They're saving their own back. But if they were asked to be in the Super League, best believe they would have said yeah.
Well, I mean, that I can fully believe that Sullivan, Golden, Brady 100% would have sold us down the river, and you would have best believed that we would have been up that London Stadium the next day, because it would be an absolute nightmare for them. But they know that anyway, and we know what they're like, and there is that. I do kind of get the argument that obviously if you do bring more viewing figures into it, but that wasn't the. Again, I'm not a club that's in Europe, so I can't really speak on that. I don't know.
We'll be soon though.
Yeah, well, yeah, and then we'll see the impact of European football in terms of transfers. Maybe we won't. Maybe Sullivan will pocket all of it, and West Ham will still be the same as we was last season. But for me, it was the level of just apathy towards the whole, the way that football should be run, the pyramid system, the relegation promote. That was the thing that was infuriating to me, and it took away from our own achievement, and that's why I was against it. I'm sure there should be something where UEFA are trying to distribute the money equally. Right, I mean, look at Real Madrid. Like, with all due respect, I think there's allegations that they get bankrolled sometimes by the Spanish government. So there is corruption in football. It's rife.
Definitely, man. Like, just on like West Ham fans, I think they would storm like United did to Old Trafford. I think they'd storm the Olympic Stadium, and because I think West Ham fans are madly passionate, ruthless sort of thing, but. How do you feel on your owners now? Like, I suppose you can't really trust them over all they've done. Like, I suppose you have to see what they do in the summer. But like, how do your fans feel about them now? Like, I think Moyes might be kind of masking them, kind of like Klopp with FSG. Is he making them look a lot better, sort of thing, with the signings, or have they done a decent job recently?
No, like I said to you about the recruitment side of things, you have to. Again, the thing is, I think people will look at it and say Bowen, Souček, Soufal have kind of been a bit of a cornerstone of our success. I think Benrahma arguably hasn't quite worked out to plan yet, but is moving in that type of Lingard, another. So it's easy to sit there and say that they have brought us some relative success. For me, the finances, the amount of money that they've saved since Pellegrini left, they've sold a lot of that squad. We've had the second half of the season, we've had 2 goalkeepers on the bench and 7 subs. no replacement striker for Allaire in January, no other centre midfielder to Declan Rice or Souček except for Mark Noble. They've made it as difficult as possible for David Moyes to succeed. And I'm not saying we would have beaten Everton, because I do think Everton did a bit of a job on us. But if you could have brought on Josh King like they did, who they only brought in on a loan, and we paid that money, that's the issue. We will never be able, even if when we are in a ridiculous position like we're in, to push on and take the extra mile. And other owners would have sat there, and we've seen it with Leicester when they won the league, use that money, invested well, brought the recruitment system in, and they just continue to develop and develop. But the reality is we just couldn't compete, particularly without those lack of signings that we needed. And it is a borderline miracle where we are. It honestly is. You have to look at the squad.
Yeah, your squad is so stretched. You don't even have a striker. Like, I wouldn't even Antonio. You just can't trust Antonio because he's so injury prone. When he does play, he's an absolute handful. Not a great finisher, but like his hold up play, he's runs down the channels is sick. The way he backs into players, he gives you kind of an outlet, but you can't really put all your eggs in the Antonio basket because there's a hamstring injury always around the corner, I think. I know because I always had him on fancy, and he was always dodgy with injuries, but he's a good player, but I think he could do a bit better.
Yeah, no, I agree. Technically, he's never been the most sound. I think we've seen him shoot from distance multiple times. It's got him rose head. But for me, I think his finishing's... I think he's getting into better finishing positions now as a centre forward. He's incredibly unique in terms of what he does for this side. The fact that you see, particularly on Sunday, peels off to the left and gives an outlet for those attacking midfielders to get in the box. And Lingard, who likes to get forward, the way that he holds the ball up, you bang on, the pace and everything. And West Ham are talking about who you're going to bring in the summer because the striker position is so important. You will never get a striker that can do all of that. So we're going to have to either bank on someone like an Ivan Toney, who's been prolific, that has got a bit of a hold-up play.
Let me tell you about Toney.
You like him, do you? Yeah. He's a great player. Peter, I used to work with Peter a few years ago. Like, Peter's been tracking Ivan Toney since Newcastle, and then Peter, he used to go on about this lad. I never really heard of him, to be honest. Ivan Toney, like for years and years. When I tell you he's the biggest fanboy ever of Ivan Toney, I've kind of come late to the party, but I've seen an awful lot of him. I was going to actually mention that to you. I think there's going to be a lot of clubs in for him because I think Ivan Toney is absolutely sick. 31 goals, 10 assists, but his movement, just everything about him looks good. So I seen you were linked with him as well not so long ago. Like, I think it depends if Brentford win the playoffs. He's going to be hard to get if he goes up. I think he'll stay with Brentford for one season if they get promoted. But man, he looks a quality player. Yeah. I did a few videos a couple of months back. I think it was in an international break, and we've been linked with Abraham and Nasiri, Toney, all these type of Armstrong as well, who's done well for Blackburn. And I was trying to identify who would be the best fit for West Ham. And for me, Toney, in terms of his hold-up play, like you say, he's so intelligent in the way that he can bring others into play. He's finishing as well, that we know, really accomplished on the ball. It would be hypothetically an improvement in possession on Antonio. But West Ham fans would have to accept that he can't do what Antonio does because Antonio is naturally a winger. And in the series, the only player for Sevilla that possibly can do that role where he can come left, he can come right, and he's clinical as a finisher. So, but I agree with you, Toney would be a great signing. And I wonder whether, because West Ham have bought from Brentford before inside Benrahma, that maybe we can go back in there for him. But I would be happy. I would be genuinely happy. I don't know about you. What's your opinion on Tammy Abraham? Because a lot of West Ham fans want Tammy in, but I'm not convinced it's going to be a natural fit for the first few months. I think it's going to take time.
Yeah, that's a good shout. I think Abraham will be a good signing for you. If he stays at Chelsea, he's only kidding himself. Like, they're going to sign a big striker in the summer. Like, Tuchel's hardly played him anyways. But Tammy Abraham is a 15 goal a season sort of striker, I think, in the Premier League, which is perfect for West Ham, I think. Like, he'd be a good signing, but something about Toney, I think Toney's all-round game is better maybe, but Abraham will probably be a bit... I say that Abraham does miss a lot of chances, so they're very similar in stature, similar age. I think Toney's 25. I'm not sure what age Abraham is, but I think I haven't seen a lot of that Sevilla lad, I can't lie, but I know he banged in a few in the Champions League, so he must have something about him. But Saibal saying take Eden Hazard from West Ham. Take Eden Hazard.
All right, he's already destroyed us a few times when he was at Chelsea, so maybe just for the sake of it.
Yeah,
I mean, he's a weird one, Hazard, isn't he? Because I think obviously he's had so many injury problems and he's getting on a bit now. I wonder whether Madrid might cut their losses at some point on him. And where does he go? America? Maybe back to France? I don't know. It's such a shame. He was an unreal player, man.
He was a baller. But to be fair, I know he's had injuries, but like, you're a €130 million sign and you're going to train an overweight. Like, I think that should be a bare minimum as a pro football player. Like, even like Championship League One standard, if you're coming into preseason overweight, like, it's a disgrace. Never mind Real Madrid, 100, like, you know what I mean? You're there to not replace Ronaldo, but some people are going to say that. Like, I think he's been a disgrace. I know the injuries don't help, but yeah, prime Hazard was one of the best wingers I've ever seen. But I think he's finished now. Especially, I don't know if you've seen him smiling with Azpilicueta or the Chelsea lads after the game. Like, you know what Madrid fans are like at the best times. They're rootless. So, but
they don't care. I'll tell you what, he scores a winning goal, wins them the league or a cup, they'll forget it. I know what they're like. They're so fickle. They really, really are, because they're so spoiled. Like, and even
they turned on Ronaldo. Like,
well, yeah, arguably one of the best players of all time, other than Messi. It's like that's the type of club that they are, because they're so prestigious, and they've obviously won basically. And one player from Madrid that I've probably underrated a little bit is Benzema, because when you watched him against Chelsea, he was their only outlet, and when he's not got Bale and Ronaldo around him, you can actually see how good he is. But his stats stack up. He's been consistent there since he's joined them for years. He's an unreal player. Unreal.
There's a reason you don't stay at Real Madrid starting week in, week out for 10 years if you're not like, he's one of the best strikers of all time. I think his hold-up play is elite. Like, he's kind of sacrificed his game for Ronaldo and Bale when they were there. So, yeah, man's an absolute baller. And imagine if France haven't even had him for a World Cup winning team. They haven't had a few players just because they fell out with the manager. But no, Benzema's actually, speaking on strikers, would you take Giroud? I don't know if there's any Giroud for a year. Would you take him? Because he's getting old now, but I still think he has a lot to offer as well.
I'll take him for a year. He's not a natural fit. I think people might look at West Ham and think he's a target man. He can hold. I'm sure. And listen, he definitely can. On Giroud, I think he's one of the most underrated strikers in the Premier League, because what he does on the ball, some of his finishes, the variability of it, his intelligence as well, is brilliant to see. And there's a reason why he's played for Arsenal for so long, and then Chelsea have signed him, and he scores 4 goals in the Champions League. He's no mug. But I think I would only take him on a year. The problem would be wages, particularly with our club. I think if we had European football, I would love to see it, because I just think West Ham really need 3 strikers. And a guy like that in the last 20 or 30, a rotation option, a player that can get goals as well, would be fantastic. But he's been linked with West Ham now for 3 years. I just don't think he's going to come up.
It might make sense with him just because he might want to stay in London. He might get good wages there as well if he's only signing him on a year. You know what I mean? You don't have to pay it.
It's a relatively attractive, because before it wasn't. It was a bit of a relegation. Now it's looking more like you can play European football still. We can play in London. You'll get game time because of the amount of games we've got. I'd take him for a year, 100%.
Yeah, but long term, obviously, he's not that. Nah. He's not that guy. He's coming on. Ivan Toney is the guy, but I think the key, as I said, with Toney is if Brentford don't come up. If Brentford don't win the playoffs, you'll get them for 10, 15 million cheaper. But if they win the playoffs, they're going to ask for 50 million, I'd imagine. If they go,
honestly, even if they don't go up, I think we'll have to pay 30. I honestly think they can demand that.
30's not a bad price, I think, because he's 25. Like, he's just coming into his prime. Like, it's kind of the perfect time to get him. I see Lee Gunner wants him at Arsenal. That's he's seen a good bit of him as well. Like, I think he'd be a good signing for even Arsenal. I don't think he'd be a top 6. I suppose you have to do it one season at the Premier League to really prove yourself, but you never know.
I think that's where West Ham have gone right. I think that's not to say that Ivan Toney is like an Arsenal player, because Arsenal are a much bigger club than West Ham. But you look at Arsenal, I think they've gone from being that Champions League, almost like a title challenger. Obviously, we know the Invincibles, and they sort of slid down progressively. And now they are where they're at. Now they haven't with West Ham, not to the same degree, obviously, but where we went from signing players on higher wages, players with a name, and it didn't really work. But then we're signing young, hungry players, or players that have got a point to prove and come in. And I think Arsenal could benefit a little bit from that in terms of players that are hungry to succeed. And if they got that kind of ethos, because at the minute there's a void. I don't look at that Arsenal squad and think there's a core of players that are going to drag them in games. There's a lot of people missing in there. David Luiz, arguably, who's on the decline of his career, is the only one in there that you think is a little bit of a leader. But other than that, you're relying on Saka, who's been brilliant and I think fantastic. A 19-year-old to drag you out of situations. Tierney's young as well. It doesn't work like that. So I can see why. I can see why that would be a decent signing. But I think, unfortunately, if he comes up with Brentford and I guarantee he has a decent season, then they're going to start saying 40, 50 mil. Because when you're in the Premier League, you can start to command that. Yeah, exactly. And then it's a problem. No one's going to get him unless you are a big club.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I think on that playoffs, Peter knows a lot more about the championship than me. Though it looks fairly open. One side, I think Barnsley and Swansea, and then you've got Bournemouth and Brentford. So people would say the winner of that will probably win it out. But you never know with the playoffs. The playoffs is unpredictable.
Fulham shouldn't have really gone up when they did, and you see this season too premature for them. So I think if Brentford had gone up, they would have given it a much better go of things.
Yeah, they seem to play nice ball. Norwich are up there as well. Norwich, West Brom, they're kind of yo-yo clubs. So I think this year they are though. I think this year with Norwich, they have to stay up. You know what I mean? They have to stay up to. They're kind of, because if they go down, like what's the point of them going up if they're just going to go down straight away? 2 relegations in a row basically. So they kind of, I think they will. They've kept the hold of their players. Like, so they're looking a lot better this year. They've kept. Them players will have Premier League experience as well. There's a few players there West Ham could take. I think Todd Cantwell would take him. I think the right back Aarons would be a cracking signing for you. I seen he was linked with Bayern. There's been a few clubs linked with him. Yeah. So I don't think he's going to stay for much longer.
I'd love Buendia. I think Buendia is such a player. Such a West Ham and a bit of a Moyes player, works so hard off the ball. I think the thing is, unfortunately, like particularly with Max Aarons would be like a clear go-to, but particularly you see how well Ben Godfrey's done at Everton. Do you know what I mean? They're on that trajectory where they are going to be top class, and I imagine they'll both play for England at some point. But I think we've got Soufal at right back, 28 years old. He's still got a couple of years left in the tank for me. No one's getting in over him, and we've got Ben Johnson at the club as well, who's still young and
looks really a decent player.
Yeah, he hasn't really been able to play that right back position regularly. He's come to left wing back. He's played right wing back, left back, kind of left sided centre back. He plays all over. He's a utility player, but for his progression, I think he does need to start being a backup right back. And I think Fredericks goes out the door as well in the summer. I just think, again, he's going to want regular first team football. To be fair to him, he hasn't really put a foot wrong since he's been in there. But I think people sometimes look at certain games, the Aston Villa game where he did a bit of a job on Grealish and West Ham doubled up on him, and say, well, he's a quality player, or when he scores a goal against Sheffield United. But I think West Ham have got to be real with ourselves. If we are all of a sudden a European club or a top half club, we are going to need better than Ryan Fredericks. And to be fair, if you can get 5 mil for Fredericks, you brought him in on a free, and you can invest it somewhere else, either towards a forward or a centre midfielder. Sander Berg would be the one for me, because I think he's release clause of 12 mil, which is
12 million.
I think if they got, apparently when Sheffield United get relegated, it's 12 mil. I would snap the hand off now.
He's not staying with them, and even if he does flop, which I wouldn't think he would, it's 12 million is peanuts for even a club like West Ham. Let's be honest, by the way the Premier League's going, like 12 million is an absolute bargain, because I think they bought him for. To be fair, they mustn't have been expecting a relegation at all. I didn't expect it either. They just fell off a cliff, but I think he'd be a quality signing. He's been injured all season as well. There's no way he stays at Sheffield with a release. I don't think he would have stayed anyway, sort of thing. So, man, that will be a quality signing if he's got that over the line, because I think he's modestly good for them.
Him and Guice is there. Harrison Reed, I rate as well from Fulham. Areola, Sam Johnston, Pereira's done them. Like, this is the thing, because the standard of the Premier League is so big now that even some of these clubs that are getting relegated, there's some serious talent in there. And if West Ham aren't going to spend loads of money, which I don't agree with, I personally think with the season we've had, the owners should be giving 70, 80 million. And even if that did include sales in there, to David Moyes, build a squad now, get 6, 7 quality players that you want, that benefit you. And I think you can be clever with things. You can be clever with budgets. Leicester do it all the time. They brought in Samara from Lille.
I've seen that Romano. I seen Romano there just announcing that there was a lot of clubs after him. I haven't seen loads of them, but supposedly he's a specialist CDM. So they just do lovely business. To be fair, their owners are top notch.
That's a weird one though, because I wouldn't have had them down to have a defensive midfielder in there, because they've obviously already got Ndidi. So they're either looking to play maybe a 4-2-3-1 and push Tielemans a little bit further forward. I don't know, because Tielemans has been playing a bit deeper. So, but listen, even if it is squad depth, they're clever. They're playing Europe. They've got something to fall back on. So fair play to them. Player that West Ham should have definitely been looking at.
Yeah, I seen United, Chelsea were linked with him. I don't know how. I seen Camavinga, Arsenal links there earlier. To be
He
honest,
ain't going to Arsenal. He's too good, isn't he?
that's absolute horseshit. I think that's just one of them where the club puts it out after the fans go mad. The fans see that and they say, okay, maybe we are trying to be serious. But I think you'd have to be deluded Arsenal fan if you think he's going there, because like he's French, he's looking at Madrid, Zidane, he's looking at Chelsea, he's looking at even City, because I think with his release clause or something, he's coming to the end of his contract. He's going to be 50 million, which could be a bargain considering what he's 17, 18.
18, yeah. When you watch him play as well, like I've only seen clips of him, but he's so complete already. 18. It's a similar one with Bellingham, isn't it? Where you watch him and you think, how are you only that age? But whoever gets him, you're gonna have a serious player for a long time as well. And I think, to be fair, if you're Camavinga, you have to go to a Madrid, a Bayern, a Liverpool, Man United. You've got to go to one of them clubs because he's already
Arsenal
so
will
good.
finish him.
They got problems, mate. They are really in, unless they sort it out this summer. And the only way I can see it is if you arrest the decline and you bring in like a Benitez just to steady it a little bit. Because I think you need someone in there with a calm head and a bit of experience to get the best out of what you've got. But they're not. The Premier League's passed them by a little bit in terms of them competing at the top end. And Tottenham are in a similar situation where if they're not careful this summer, Kane and Son go, they're left with a massive void.
Kane, I don't know what you think of Kane, but if he's anyway serious about his career, like he should be faking an injury, refusing to train. You know what I mean? Handing it. He has to do that to go, I think, because if he just trains away, but like you know what I mean, he's still looking at clothes. But you know what I mean? If he's still behaving, let's say, there's no one really. He has to force that move himself, I think, or else no one's going to get him.
Well, who's going to? I think a lot of Spurs fans who speak to him, it's like who can afford him. Like they're in agreement that he will leave, but then they also think that there's no one that's got the money. The fit would. I actually think he would be brilliant for Manchester City. I honestly think and I know Pep Guardiola does rate him highly.
Play that false nine.
United's a weird one because obviously Greenwood's now coming to a bit of form. Who I don't think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's using him right. Keep playing him on the right hand side. He's a number 9.
He's a striker.
Yeah, exactly. Cavani, who, I mean, they've managed to get a bit out of him, which is quite impressive. And I've been really impressed with him when I've seen him play. So it wouldn't be the natural go-to. I think United might be able to get away with it if you play Martial, who's not really a number 9, but you can get away with it as well. I think for him, he has to go. Like, honestly, as a West Ham fan, and I hate Tottenham, it would be a shame if Harry Kane never won a major trophy or even a Premier League. Because, you know, when we get to this conversation now about Hall of Fames, people say you haven't won a lot. I hate that argument because there's so many quality players outside of those kind of teams, and for me, you know,
lads like that.
He's too good. He's too good, and he's a better football player than people give him credit for. And that's for me, he should be a contender for Player of the Season. I know Diaz has done unreal, but he's got to be up there. Just because Spurs have flopped, you know, if Spurs didn't have Kane or Son, that I think the forms table says they would be bottom half easily. So I'm sure Mourinho would have tried to figure something else out, but that's how big they are for Tottenham.
Yeah, that like Jack says, but I think he still has a few years left on his contract. So by doing that, he's kind of snookered himself. But as I said, if he really wants to go, he just kind of has to force a move and say, "I'm not playing. I want to go."
Yeah.
Like he just has to do. Because I don't think Levy, you know how stubborn Levy is. Will he even sell to I don't think he'd sell to an English team. He'd be perfect for Chelsea. They're looking for a cent. Like if Chelsea got Kane, I would give them honestly, I'd have them favourites for the title. If City got Kane, you can just give them the title for the next 3 or 4 years, honestly, because it would just be a joke. He could play creator, but he'd still score 30 plus goals a season. Like it'd be an absolute madness. Me and Peter were kind of saying with Kane, I think PSG could be a fit if Mbappe went. But same thing again, who's going to buy Mbappe? Just because that Poch reunion, Kane could look at Paris, like living in Paris. I know they might not win the title this year, but if Kane goes there, it's basically a guaranteed title, or he's a much better chance of winning title sort of thing. Still would have a decent chance of winning the Champions League. So I don't know if PSG would go in. He's not like like Kane. PSG, I think with their signings, like with Neymar, they sign him for the Neymar brand as well, sort of thing. So with Kane's a baller, but I think these clubs look at the branding as well. Kane's not really someone you can brand loads. You know what I mean? He doesn't have. You know what I mean? He's not
marketable. I know what you mean. Yeah, spot on. But
So
I don't think he goes abroad, because even though PSG would be obviously he'd be sort of back with Pochettino, if you could keep Mbappe, which again probably wouldn't happen, you'd have to get rid of one to bring in the other. Neymar, he'd win the league, win titles. For me, I think Kane wants to do it in this Premier League. I think he wants to be top goal scorer, and one of those clubs, even Man United, who I think play horrific football at times, Manchester City, Chelsea, he would get that tight. He would get there. And at the minute, I think, as much as Kane talks about Tottenham, and I'm sure there's an affinity there because he has come through their youth system, he's in it for me for some individual accolades as well. And his stats over 4 or 5 seasons have been absolutely ridiculous. He's the closest thing to a modern day Alan Shearer that the Premier League's got. So if he goes to Man City, he's sweet. If he goes to Man United, he's sweet. Chelsea, exactly the same, because Tottenham don't create enough. He's creating his own chances and working off a system with just one other player in Heung-min Son. And when he can get around players that are going to put it on a plate for him, then he's going to be on 30 goals. So it'd be interesting to see Tottenham's demise. That'll be quite fun. But he's a great player. He's an unbelievable player, and I hope he does it for England in the Euros as well, because I think we are going to need him because he's that good.
Yeah, I hope he doesn't. I hope if he doesn't go abroad, he just stays at Tottenham, because it would make me sick if he went to United. Even though I think with United he wouldn't do as well as people say, because they don't make as. I think Solskjaer is an absolute bum, but I think Solskjaer could. Yeah. Let's not get it wrong. Kane would still score at least 20 goals just because he's that good. But the way Man United are just it would just be a kind of a Man United sign a top class player, and Kane would just kind of be banging in goals on his own thing. You know what I mean? They're just pure individuals. They don't really have a set. If he went to City, he could play false nine, because I think City look better in a false nine. He could drop deep. He could create as well. But Kane would get. I think Kane went to City, stayed relatively fit, and played most games. He'd be like a 30 goals, 15 assists sort of thing if he played enough for them, because it would be a joke if he goes City. To be honest, I don't think Levy sells to them because he's that stubborn. He'll ask for like 150. I don't think anyone's paying that for him.
No. I think you're right about that. I look at Manchester United and I feel that they don't have any. I don't know if this is too harsh, but I just don't feel that there's any type of pattern in their play. Their approach play, when the team sits deep, there's no way of breaking them down. It's very one-dimensional. They might be one of the best teams in the leagues on the counter. I think that's a lot to do with the personnel that they've got, and obviously there is quality there. Pogba, we know, is coming to his own a little bit in the past few months. Cavani, even Fernandes, I know he gets sort of put that penalty tag on him, and that is partly true. But some of the finishes as well in the Europa League, he's a quality player. I think Kane would be struggling coming deep and a player not going in beyond. Maybe it would work if you went to Ollie would have to go to a 4-3-3, and he would have to have Rashford, or maybe if you bring in Sancho. I doubt Man United are going to spend that much money getting in beyond. That's the only way it works, because he's not. For me, I don't think Kane's going to be that effective in a 4-2-3-1. Because when you've got a 10 behind you, Bruno's going to be pushing him up, sit on the shoulder. And for me, Kane's game's adapted so much now that I think you're right. If he plays false nine at City, he's going to get more assists. He's going to get more goals anyway. And he's that title decider, isn't he? He's like Van Persie for Arsenal a few years ago. Sick. Whoever he goes to is going to call it.
If he went to Man United and Solskjaer stayed, I genuinely don't think they would win the league. Honestly, I still think that's how much I don't rate Solskjaer. I know they're second now and they will win the Europa League, but if you look at that Europa League, they shouldn't be in it. They bottled 3 games. They needed a point from 3 games and they couldn't get it. Like they're in Europe. Like they bet Roma, Sociedad, Granada, whoever you pronounce that, but they shouldn't be in that. I know it's a trophy at the end of the day. Look, they've had a much better season than us. I think they're in a false position. I don't think second is Solskjaer's ceiling, and if there was ever a season Man United are going to win the league recently, it was going to be this season, because even City fell off their own standards. So as long as Solskjaer stays, I'm confident they won't win the league, no matter who they buy.
Yeah, that was the worry, wasn't it? That Man United would go and win it playing just awful football and Solskjaer being their manager. Because at one point it did look like they were going to take that top spot and then kick on, and all of a sudden we're going, hang on a minute, how? And that's the problem, though, because I think even if they did get Kane, they could bore their way to a title 1-0, or he nicks something, or they get that's what I'm saying. This is the problem with Man United, and what I don't understand is, I think, to be honest, I think a lot of United fans aren't happy with him, and I understand they want to keep him in there because they need that stability, and I think he has restored a little bit of that in his credit, but at the same time, had they got Pochettino in, had they got Tuchel in with that side,
I'd be scared.
So would I. They're always one off. They're always one off, and I think they're kind of a victim with the Glazers. They just want a bit of a yes man in there, a guy that's going to keep it ticking over and keep getting top 4. And he will do that because that squad's too good to not get top 4. But he'll never.
But it's Man United. Like it's Man United. That should be not even bare minimum. Like that should be like this is the best Man United team since Fergie left. I think when you compare it to Moyes' team, when you compare it to Van Gaal's team, when you compare like. It's miles better. Even the squad depth, like not even playing Van de Beek, like he's playing crap players like McTominay. I honestly think he's absolutely woeful. But
that is funny though. You got to admit that is quite funny having a Man United squad and your defensive midfield partnership with Fred and McTominay. That is something to behold. Like that is really
Facts.
The problem is United are only one bit or two bits of the jigsaw away from
definitely
because their squad's too good. If they and I hope this would never happen. Say they got a Declan Rice, they could play one holding midfielder. They could push another man forward.
Facts. Bruno could play a bit deeper. You can push Pogba on. Honestly, I think their priority sign is CDM. If they signed Ndidi, and let's just say Solskjaer I think he's obsessed with McTominay, but let's just say they signed Ndidi. I think he's the best CDM in the league. Didn't play McTominay again, and they played Ndidi, Bruno, and Pogba, or even Fred, because I think Fred would look miles better with someone like Ndidi. I'm telling you, they'd look miles better. But as long as he is manager, I'm happy. Like he's going to get the contract. I know it's not announced, but whether they win that Europa or not, he's getting a new contract. So happy days. People say I'm a salty Liverpool. I just genuinely think he's completely out of his depth. Like Man United really could be. Glazers are terrible owners, don't get me wrong, but if they got a proper manager in like a Poch, even like a Conte, wouldn't play the best football, I'd really be scared.
Can you imagine? Conte would have him winning the title. He would. Well, I can't confirm it because obviously Pep
have to properly challenge him.
Yeah, exactly. They would be. And Conte is I don't think he's underrated anymore, but I think in terms of people, honestly, some of the things that he's won, and obviously getting Inter to win that title as well, he's a top manager. He's so good. He came into Chelsea, didn't he? After like they were 10th, I think, before the season, and then literally come in and changed it. They won it by like 10 points. I mean, he's just like he's different level.
Nah, me and Pierre are massive fans. Like that, you know that Juventus 9 in a row. He started that and he ended it. So he won 3 in a row with Juventus. Then he comes with Inter and ends it. And they walked the title, by the way. It wasn't like they just scraped it. Like they won it by 10, 12 points or whatever. Depends how they finish the season.
Well,
but
he made Marcus Alonso look like a quality player. He made his career on that left wing back position. So
look, Alonso's a baller, but he's just absolute. If you watch him, he literally plays striker. Like he spends more time in the opposition box than his own box. Honestly, he's not a defender, but as part of a tree where there's 3 centre backs behind him, I think Alonso can actually be quality. But yeah, I think Chelsea, like he took Chelsea from 10th to first. Remember they got spanked 3-0 and he was like, no, scrap this. I'm going to play 3 at the back. They walked the title. I think it was Diego Costa Hazard team. Man, he's criminally underrated. But I think now after what he's done with Inter, he's kind of getting the respect he deserves. Because I thought Chelsea got rid of him way too early. I say that. Chelsea are ruthless. They just sat like Tuchel will be sacked before Solskjaer and Arteta. I'm nearly sure of that. Like
I think he goes in the summer. I can't see him staying.
I think though, if they were going to sack him, they would have sacked him now. Why not sack him straight after that? I think he's such a cheap option. The board, obviously, the Kroenkes don't give a rat's, but I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if he stayed a bit longer and then gets sacked midway through next season. But best believe, if Tuchel wins the Champions League this year and Chelsea are struggling first 10 games of the season, he could be sacked. Like that's just kind of what Chelsea do. They're ruthless. And to be fair, I think they're the most successful team in England the last 10, 15 years. So you can't say it doesn't work. Like I'd love to have an owner like Abramovich. To be honest, I rate it big time.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of that. I'm sure Chelsea fans feel differently about it, but it's a bit of a sort of sell your soul type moment. I know they had history anyway before then, but obviously not to the level. I think a lot of that with the managers comes down to the money. Because I mean, look, what Chelsea have done well, and what you've seen that they've done well, even with Lampard, is they've invested in a squad. And every time you've seen a manager go out the door, they've always walked into a decent squad. They've never walked into a rebuild job. Every time they've gone and bought something, even with, I think Mourinho left in the following season, they got Kante was brought in and a few other players. So I think they've always had that to rely on. And and I think that's why they've been so successful.
No, facts. I said it when they bet Atletico. I think they're going to win the Champions League. I don't know about you. I think they'll walk.
I really
hope.
not.
To be honest, I don't know what to say. Like, it's because I hate both of them. Like, the only thing I'd say is Chelsea have already won it, so it's the one thing I can hold over City fans, sort of thing. But let's be honest, City are going to win it eventually. If they don't win it this year, they are going to win it soon. So
I think
it's just a matter of time.
I think you're underestimating them, because I know a lot of people say this, but you look at that Chelsea squad, and I mean, not off the top of my head, I can't really think of anyone that have actually won the Champions League or done it, or recently anyway. And you could say the same about Manchester City, but Pep Guardiola has been there and he has done it. And I think he's not played his full strength squad, and why he's done that, I don't know. I would have done that in the FA Cup semi-final, to be honest, but he's been playing around with it. I honestly feel that when we see City with the false nine, with their full strength squad, I think they just edge it over Chelsea. But when you watch them games, they're tactically they're different level. Like when you watch those type of games, you just think. I mean, Chelsea are a phenomenal side. I mean, and he really, you got to give credit to Tuchel. I think if he had a full season, he would be manager of the year, sort of just below David Moyes. But he's a top manager, and even I wasn't really convinced on him. I thought he played boring football with PSG, but you look at it, maybe trying to have Neymar and Mbappe and fitting them in, and whereas this Chelsea side, there's no real.
There's good attitudes. They're all good players, but there's no like. If you look at Chelsea, I'll ask you who's the main star. I could ask three people. I get three different answers. Some would say Havertz. Some would say Mount. Some would say not Werner, but maybe even Pulisic. You know what I mean? They don't have an absolute. Right now, they don't. Anyways, they just have a team of good players with very good attitudes, which is nearly better than having a team of a few superstars, but are kind of, let's say, trickier to coach. You know what I mean? I think that Chelsea squad they've got so many options there.
Yeah, and it's funny, isn't it, how Kante all of a sudden is a top class player, and people are saying, I'm not sure he's the same player. And you watch him in some of those Champions League games, and exactly, and the way, honestly, the way that sometimes you watch Chelsea having a two-man midfield, it's like having three men, and the way he can go and win the ball back. And yeah, I know technically he's not brilliant, but even either he makes the run, which takes defences out of it, or he wins the ball up high, and Chelsea already have three players there. Like, there's so few players in world football that can do that. He's absolutely unreal. And Mason Mount is like a manager's dream, and let's be honest, he's sound.
I didn't think he was that good. I honestly,
I
used
know
to think he was a good player. I used to think he's a good player, but I thought when Tuchel came in, he was going to be chopped. Like, remember, he was kind of seen as Lampard's son, this and that. But man, he's really stepped up his game. He's been their best player this season. I've been proved wrong on him, sort of thing, because I always thought he was good technically, but I always thought, once Havertz and these lads get going, he's not going to get near the squad. But in their big games, he's the first man on the team sheet, I would say.
I think he's criminally underrated. Even throughout this season, even with Lampard, like, he's always performed, and he's always performed to about a 7 out of 10. And how many different positions that guy plays? He can play slightly deeper, can play a 10, can play on the left or the right, and he's still okay. And he's a bit of a victim of the fact that he's not Phil Foden in the way that Phil Foden's got an unbelievable first touch and close control. And he's not that level. And he's not like Grealish, who's going to keep the ball and draw a foul or create. But he can do everything well. Everything to a really high standard consistently. And for me, I look at the England team and I think it's hard not to have him starting, because just you want a player like that in there, because you work so hard off the ball as well.
Yeah, me and Peter done our Euro squad vid. We had an argument. We kind of had a 4-2-3-1. We had Grealish on the left and Sancho on the right. He had Mount at the 10, but I couldn't look past Foden. But like, if Mount started, there'd be no qualms. I don't think Sancho will start. That was just our team, but Mount's definitely going to start. He's a player Southgate would love as well. Just before you wrap up Euros, how are you feeling about them? I think, as an Irish person, I should be saying I hope England don't do well. But I like a lot of the England players. I like Sancho. I like Grealish. I like Foden. So, like, if you've done well, I actually wouldn't mind. Most Irish people be cheering against you, but I just think the Southgate tax and maybe the Jordan Pickford could do you. I think if he's didn't play Pickford and he's had a half decent manager, I'd have you as right up there to win it out.
Yeah, it's annoying. We've had the same problem with a couple of years ago in Euro 2004, where we had all those players and we couldn't get them to play together. England never really have had that manager that you know is going to get everyone tactically moving in the right way. And that's I understand. But to be honest, mate, we could go in there and absolutely bottle it. And this is a big tournament for Southgate, because if he does bottle it, as an England fan, he has to go. But and not even because I don't like him or I don't respect what he did in 2018. I know people said it was an easy route, and it was, but he still galvanised the whole country.
No, he still did decent. He still did okay.
People forget. I remember watching 2010 World Cup, and Germany battered us 4-1, and we were horrific. And after that, I was like, I can't watch England, because they're honestly, there's no tactical element to it. There's no proper skill. We're not progressing. He come in and he changed all that. So you've got to give him some kind of credit. But we've got way too good of a squad, way too many good players to waste another year. And the World Cup comes around so quick. We've got to get someone in that can get these players moving. I hope he does it and proves me completely wrong and we win it. But I honestly think if he doesn't get to a final, there's still going to be question marks. He has to get to a final with his squad. He's too good. He's way too good.
It's like Solskjaer with Man United. Quality, like, they're two managers that the players will all get on with. They'll never be bust-ups and stuff. But when it comes to crunch time, they'll get tactically outdone, sort of thing. Both have good squads, but I think they're just. This is a good point by Jack. I completely agree. Like, the youngsters you have, like, I'm envious looking at, like, England's third team would absolutely destroy Ireland's. You know what I mean? I'm just looking at some of the players that won't be going. Still quality. So Southgate for me has no excuses, but I don't think he's going to win out just because he'll get outdone by the top managers when it really gets down to the nitty gritty. But we shall see. I'm looking forward to that a lot. It should be a really good tournament, to be fair.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. Like, obviously, it's a good vibe anyway, watching the Euros and free football for like a month. It's nice. I think you're right. I think we'll get to the top teams, and they'll be they're more switched on than we are. We haven't still been able to go and beat a top side in a competitive tournament for a long, long time. And I just don't trust Southgate enough. We should have, if we'd been astute enough when we had that 1-0 win over, or 1-0 lead over Croatia, and got that 2-0 done, and we'd seen that game out, maybe that's a change in mentality as a side, or even as a manager for Southgate. But for me, France, I look at France and I think, I tell you what, they will turn up, and they've got game changers. They're tactically astute. They've got quality players in there, and
been there, done that.
They've been there. They've won it, and that's the massive thing. And like, pinning your hopes on Southgate to win a Euros is quite a lot. Maybe we get lucky and it's a semi-final in England at Wembley, and all the fans, or there's a lot more fans there, and all of
that would be sick. To be fair,
it'd be unreal, man. It'd be unreal, but I can't see it. I think we could get a semi and bottle it for me. Yeah,
we shall see. Pog with the shit on England. We'll end it there. We'll end it there. Corey, thanks again for coming on. Look, that was a quality stream. Obviously, Pete couldn't make it today, but where can everyone find you? Like, West Ham, big West Ham fan, quality content over there, West Ham Way. So make sure to check that out, guys.
Yeah, top man. Yeah, West Ham Way, and then Corey Kemp _ on Twitter. If you want to see West Ham, the last 3 games before West Ham try and get European football.
West Ham European football. We will see it. We will see it.
Days, mate.